All right. Hey, everyone. It is a beautiful Sunday here in southeastern Wyoming. And today's session is five must-haves in a Green New Deal, especially for rural states like Wyoming. And this is a video especially for those folks that are worried that the Green New Deal will kill the economy. So when folks think about the Green New Deal, they mostly think about building green infrastructure, trains, wind and solar, and newer agricultural infrastructure to replace the old kind that we have had. And that had a massive failure on the east side of the state last summer that was devastating to eastern Wyoming farmers. Infrastructure is definitely important, but there's a lot more to a Green New Deal that would actually work than that. So number one is good paying union jobs. Why do good paying jobs matter in an environmental program? Because people need to eat first and foremost. If we are putting together an ambitious program to save literally billions of lives through stabilizing the climate, but those people are going to live miserable lives of poverty, in some ways there's not much point. Any Green New Deal that isn't caring for people's economic well-being builds failure right into the DNA of the program. It's also important because poor people are forced to make terrible choices ecologically, and I'm going to put choices in quotes there. So if your car has a belching, stinky tailpipe that you know is polluting the environment horribly, but it's all you can afford, you're going to have that car. And if all you can afford is McDonald's and Walmart, that's what you're going to do in order to eat. There's a deep relationship between these things. The Walmarts of the world pay no taxes and poverty wages. And Walmart is the largest employer in Wyoming. So this is really relevant to us here. The wages are so bad that US taxpayers foot the bill of an average of $1 million per year per store in social services to support Walmart employees. And Congress has been complicit in keeping wages that low while also not making them pay any taxes that might cover those social services that they take advantage of. If a local community has depressed wages, people shop more at places like Walmart, eventually putting local businesses out of business and leaving Walmart as the only game in town. And meanwhile, we probably all know people who have a strong social justice or ecological consciousness who literally can't afford to shop anywhere else. We want to do the right thing, and when we're poor, we can't. So good paying union jobs have got to be central to any Green New Deal, or the structure of our economy and the incestuous relationship between Congress and capitalists is going to undermine anything we try to put in place. Number two is universal broadband, including our rural communities, so that work from home is an option for more people. Now, many in Wyoming have discovered over the last couple of months that our internet is not good enough for a shelter-in-place crisis, let alone permanently working from home, because our signals are just not strong and stable enough to support it. At the same time, Americans' average commute covers 32 miles and about an hour of our days. In more urban places, a lot of those commutes are on public transit, but we don't have that option in rural places. That's a lot of gas burned and a lot of time spent in our cars and not doing things we'd probably prefer to do with that time. Working from home is both a quality of life issue and an ecological issue. And while not all jobs can be done from home, a hell of a lot of them can. Rural broadband also dramatically expands our options for diversifying our economy in places like Wyoming, while being more ecologically responsible. And that's the direction we need to go in if we are going to have a stable enough climate to continue to support human life. Number three, grow stuff, a lot of stuff. Scientists tell us that planting 1 trillion trees worldwide would be a significant contribution to stabilizing the climate. I'm proposing that the US plant 10 billion of those, but I'm also proposing that we not stop there. Sustainable agriculture needs to come back as the norm of how we feed ourselves in this country. Today, organically grown food has become pretty bougie food. Only the better off among us can afford it. But when my grandparents had a big garden in their yard, pretty much everything was organic. Back then, we just called it food. Huge corporate agriculture is terrible for the climate. As just one example, the emissions from poorly run monoculture operations like confined animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, have emissions that are far higher than they need to be for us to still have animal protein in our diets. Meanwhile, permaculturalists and integrated practice farmers in every region of this country have been developing and modeling ways to grow a lot of food in more ecologically sound and humane ways for decades, where animal and plant agriculture are in symbiotic, mutually beneficial relationships with each other. We need to stop incentivizing ever bigger monoculture farms that have put traditional family farmers out of business. And we need a massive grants program to get small to medium scale farmers back on the land and using sustainable methods to grow and raise food. The United Nations did a study a few years back that showed that the best way to feed the world is locally, democratically controlled, small scale, sustainable farming. The US big ag habit needs to get kicked as part of any Green New Deal. We also need to make not just hemp legal, and thank you to Wyoming's legislature for taking that step, but also legalize marijuana. Literally, the more plants we grow, the more we are doing our part to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, and pot is a very popular plant. So many people are looking for fancy technological fixes to the climate crisis, but the best technology we have is actually that time-tested and true simple creation of the plant. Number 4, address military emissions. The US military is the single biggest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world, according to statistics generated by the military itself. I am pro-military personnel and anti-militarization. I believe that soldiers are an important part of any kind of working class solidarity movement, and I am appalled by the poverty wages entry-level military personnel are paid and the way that their medical and psychological needs are not adequately met after they come home from war zones. A Green New Deal has to look to the care of military personnel, where it is leaving out a huge swath of people. However, we also need to be real about those emissions. Ecology doesn't care about patriotism, and we can't head off ecological collapse by digging deeper into nationalism. So some assessment is needed. Do we actually need a military presence in 2/3 of the countries in the world? Like, do we genuinely believe that 2/3 of the world is a threat to our safety? I don't. I think our military has been running on dual purposes for a long time. Not just the literal protection of American lives, but also the protection of capitalist interests, and more often than not, mineral interests. As we back away from being such a carbon-reliant country, we can also back away from military aggression. And that's good because we need to take a huge bite out of our military emissions. There's a permaculture principle that says the problem is the solution. I believe that the biggest, most real threat, the real enemy, if you will, right now to American lives is climate disruption. And we have a tremendous asset in that fight in our military. Let's bring our well-trained, smart, coordinated military personnel home to fight the biggest enemy that we have right now. Let's increase military base pay, which is currently below minimum wage, up to that level of good union paying jobs, and put them to work really protecting the public by building the green infrastructure and planting a bunch of those plants. Now, a side bonus to this proposal would be considerably less PTSD for enlisted military members. I've never heard of a case of somebody getting PTSD from planting trees, and I would love us to end the deep psychological harm that a lot of our soldiers currently incur during their service. Number 5, empower local communities. As I've driven all over Wyoming on this campaign, I have found myself sometimes driving for hours along roads with almost no human habitation. But my constant companion is electrical wires. There's a thing called line loss in the electricity business. Some electricity gets expended simply by moving electricity around. Miles of wires means vast inefficiencies, more mining needed, more money lost, and more emissions generated for no actual value being produced. As we are looking to rebuild infrastructure to be green, the best answer from an ecological and security standpoint is to build rural microgrids. Microgrids are locally owned and operated small-scale utilities that produce the electricity the community needs within that community itself. Wyoming is blessed with abundant wind and sun, and every community here could produce their own power with readily available low emissions, with readily available technology, low emissions technology, and increasingly cheap technology. An added benefit is that the profits from those ventures stay within the community itself rather than heading out of state. We can also empower local communities by making worker-owned cooperatives a legal structure in every state. Worker cooperatives are inherently local and regional in nature. In order to have democratically controlled workplaces, people need to be able to talk to each other and make decisions together. And some of those decisions are about the nature of your business. I believe that local communities know what their communities need and that they should have control over the nature of their business sector. Multinational corporations don't care about our local communities. Out-of-state owners don't care about our local communities, which has been amply demonstrated by the serial vulture capitalists who have destroyed our coal companies and are trashing the communities that are home to our mines. If coal is not viable anymore, our local communities need the power and support for self-determination right now. What does Gillette want for Gillette's Main Street? What does Rock Springs want for Rock Springs? Multi-corporations don't give a rat's ass about your answers to those questions, which is why we need to defang them and restore the integrity of local control and local economies in our rural states. I believe in dispersed, local, democratically controlled answers to big problems. Local community creativity is one of our secret weapons in winning this climate thing. I've lived in communities that are designing themselves to be ecologically sound and economically just. I know that future is possible for Wyoming and every other state in this nation. And so as we are looking at Green New Deal proposals, we need to be looking at an economically integrated blueprint for that. One that centers local communities and working class people. I'm ready to kick vulture capitalists out of our lives permanently. And that is only going to be possible if we elect people who are willing to stand up to them and advocate for the people and for all of us to have a livable planet to do our lives on. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Jana Ludwig. I'm running for U.S. Senate in Wyoming, and I appreciate you tuning in to our Sunday town halls. Thanks.